Sabine Tolbert stepped off the noon stage at Elk Fork in a plain gray traveling dress, and heard the 28-year-old cattleman she had come to marry tell his hired man, "That is not a bride. That is somebody's aunt. Ride her back to the depot." Sabine Tolbert stood on the boards with her one carpet bag beside her, and did not, for the first 5 seconds, know what to do with the sentence. She was 36. She had been a schoolteacher at a Zanesville, Ohio, girls' academy, for 12 years, and a widow of a Zanesville dry goods clerk for 4. She had a plain face and gray at the temples, and a solid, competent way of holding herself, and she had answered the Elk Fork advertisement honestly, giving her age plainly in the 3rd letter. The cattleman, Wilf Kroll, had written back that 36 was fine, that maturity was preferred to youth, that a woman with a head on her shoulders was what a Wyoming ranch needed. He had, apparently, changed his mind on the depot boards. His hired man, a young sunburned boy of 19, tipped his hat at Sabine apologetically. "Ma'am, Mr. Kroll asked me to ride you back," Sabine said, quietly. "He may say so to me, sir. He is standing 8 feet away." Wilf Kroll turned around. He said, "Ma'am, you look older than your picture." Sabine said, "Mr. Kroll, I sent you no picture." Wilf Kroll said, "You look older than I expected." Sabine said, "I am 36, sir. I have been 36 for 11 months. I told you so in my 3rd letter, my 5th letter, my 7th letter, and my 9th. Your response to each was that it was acceptable. Please decide, sir, whether it is acceptable now. If it is not, I will take the return stage. I would like to hear you say so plainly, however, so that no ambiguity attaches." Wilf Kroll said, "It is not acceptable." Sabine Tolbert said, "Then please pay my return fare, and I will take the 4 o'clock. Wilf Kroll said, "I have paid your fare out. I have not paid your fare back." Sabine Tolbert said, "Then you and I are at an impasse, sir, because I have $4 remaining from my Ohio savings and cannot pay it myself." Wilf Kroll turned. He got up on his horse. He rode away. Sabine Tolbert stood on the boards. A voice behind her said, "Ma'am." She turned. A tall, gray-templed rancher of about 42 was standing at the freight rail with his hat in his hand. He was in a plain wool coat. He had a solid, honest face and a mouth used to keeping still. He said, "Ma'am, forgive me speaking to you on the boards. I am Peter Callis. My ranch is 9 miles east. I heard the whole of what Wilf Kroll said to you, because Wilf Kroll speaks the way Wilf Kroll speaks. I would like to offer you a plain, honest arrangement of my own, if you would consider it. I have needed a wife 3 years. I am 42. I am widowed. I have no children. I have a plain, solid ranch and a plain, solid house, and my sister Nettie runs the boarding house across the street and will vouch for me if you would like her word. If you would consider my offer, please do. If you would not, please tell me so, and I will pay your fare back to Ohio." Sabine said, "Mr. Callis, I would like to speak to your sister." Peter Callis said, "Come." Nettie Callis was 50. She had been running the Elk Fork boarding house since her husband had died in 1871. She sat Sabine at the parlor table with tea. She told Sabine, plainly, that her brother Peter had been widowed at 39 of a wife he had loved for 15 years, that he had grieved a full year and had come back to his ranch a plain, quiet man, and that he had, at 42, developed the habit of speaking to no woman except his sister on account of his shyness about the whole subject. She said that the fact that he had spoken to Sabine on the boards was the largest thing he had done in 3 years, and that it meant something. She said her brother was a good man, an honest man, and a lonely one. She said Sabine could take the plain, quiet marriage he was offering, or the return stage at 4 o'clock, and either was fair, and both were honorable. Sabine said, "Miss Callis, I would like the plain, quiet marriage." Nettie said, "Then you shall have it." The county judge married Peter Callis and Sabine Tolbert in Nettie Callis's parlor at 11 the next morning. Nettie stood witness for Sabine. Nettie's grown son Silas stood witness for Peter. Sabine wore a plain gray dress. Peter wore his one good coat. The judge, who was Peter's cousin, and had been trying for a year to marry Peter off to a Denver widow of the family's acquaintance, was very pleased to receive Sabine instead, and said so in his official remarks. They drove to the ranch that afternoon. Sabine took over Peter's kitchen inside a week. She took over his ledger inside 2. She began, at the plank table in the evenings, to teach Peter, who had never learned his letters properly, the McGuffey first and then the second. He was a quick student. He read a chapter of the McGuffey third by the last Sunday in July. He read a page of the county paper on his own, the second Sunday of August. He turned to Sabine at his own plank table after that page and said, "Wife." Sabine said, "Husband." He said, "I have been reading the McGuffey first on my own, since Christmas of 1868, and I have not been able to admit it, because I could not get past the third page. You have gotten me past. Please do not tell my sister. She will make it into a Christmas story." Sabine laughed. Peter laughed. They finished the page together. In September, Sabine took the small position of the Elk Fork schoolmistress. She had been asked in July by the town board. The previous mistress had married and moved to Nebraska. Sabine taught 9 children on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays in the small back room of Nettie's boarding house. Sabine walked to town on her own each teaching day. Peter picked her up at 4 in the buckboard. She rode home in the yellow evening light with her satchel on her lap and her plain, quiet husband beside her at his ordinary driving pace. Wilf Kroll, 30 miles up the valley, married a 19-year-old bride in October. She left him inside a month. He married a 22-year-old in February. She left him inside 3 weeks. He was, by June of the following year, 40 years old, and had married nothing that would stay. Peter Callis heard about all of this at the Mercantile and reported it to Sabine at supper without comment. Sabine received it without comment. 3 years on a warm September evening at the Callis Ranch, Sabine Callis sat on the porch step with Peter beside her and their small daughter Ruth, 5 months old, asleep against her chest. Peter had, at 45, become a father for the first time in his life. He held Ruth every evening between 5 and 7. He did not hand her back to her mother until either the baby was asleep or a piece of Peter's supper was going cold. Sabine said, "Peter." Peter said, "Sabine." She said, "You are 13 minutes late for supper again." Peter said, "I know." Sabine kissed his temple. Nettie Callis, from the porch bench, said mildly, "Sister." Sabine said, "Yes, Nettie." Nettie said, "I told you." Sabine said, "You did, Nettie." Nettie said, "Do not say I did not." Sabine said, "I would not, Nettie." And Sabine Tolbert Callis, who had stood on the boards of Elk Fork 3 years back and had heard herself called somebody's aunt in the plain hearing of a whole depot porch, put her cheek against her husband's temple and understood that the good slow country had, in its good slow way, put the wrong man on those boards at exactly the wrong hour, so that the right man 3 yards away could hear him say the wrong thing, and had, in that one plain minute, arranged a plain quiet marriage of a 42-year-old widower and a 36-year-old schoolteacher into the whole better shape of a household Wilf Kroll had not, in his young unfinished heart, imagined possible. And so it had.